Okay, here's the second part to the cells. Just as a reminder, a solvent does the dissolving, so a good example would be water. A solute is what is being dissolved, like salt would be a solute. Okay, movement through the cell. We have membrane channels, which is a protein that allows only certain molecules to pass. Carrier molecules, they bind to the molecule and carry them into the cell. A good example would be like insulin and glucose. We do have a carrier molecule that the insulin will go into, and then that will take it into the cell. And what that statement means by they are picky is it will only allow very specific things to go inside of the carrier molecules to be taken inside the cell. Okay, receptor molecules are responsible for intracellular communication. Hormones and second messengers are an example of this. Now that is more of an ANP2 thing when you get into the endocrine system and you really get into all the different hormones and so forth. But with this one, your body releases a hormone and it travels to the receptor that's on the cell, and that receptor is made of a protein. When that binding takes place, then there's a cascade of events that tells the intracellular parts to start doing their job. So some sort of reaction takes place. Okay, vesicles are a membrane-bound sac that transports substances in and out of the cell. For example, exocytosis, which is what the cell does to expel something that has been digested. Now this word antigen is a fancy word for a foreign particle that does not belong in your system, such as a virus or a bacteria or a dying cell. Now it's considered an antigen. So your body will degrade it, break it down, destroy it, and then it will get it out of the cell through exocytosis. Okay, membrane pumps. These are unique because there is movement from low concentration to high concentration, which would be like looking at this as moving something uphill instead of downhill. So this does require more energy. A good example of that would be the sodium-potassium pump. Okay, here's a picture of the membrane channel there, and then there's a receptor, cell receptor. Now what these membrane channels essentially do is they will open to allow things in, and then they close to stop allowing whatever it is to come in. Okay, here's a carrier molecule that is being allowed to pass through the cell. In this case, it's glucose. So the carrier molecule binds with a molecule such as glucose on the outside of the cell membrane, and then the carrier molecule would change shape and release the molecule on the inside of the membrane, okay, as you're seeing there. Okay, the active transport does require energy, and in this example with the sodium-potassium pump, so this is Na is sodium on the periodic table, and K is potassium, so do not confuse that with vitamin K. K by itself is potassium on the periodic table. The sodium-potassium pump operates in the plasma membrane of all human cells, and we need this to survive. Later on we're going to get into specifics of this on how it works, but bottom line is when we have an action potential or something that's set in motion that requires energy, we have depolarization followed by repolarization. Now this is something we'll discuss in more detail later. But when this depolarization takes place, you're going to have sodium move and then potassium moves. And they move in such a way that it changes the membrane potential, so we get an electric current, muscle contraction, or whatever. Okay, this statement here, there's a higher concentration of potassium inside the cell and a higher concentration of sodium on the outside of the cell. This applies when the cell is at rest. So at rest, okay, at rest, we have a higher concentration of potassium on the inside and a higher concentration of sodium on the outside. When depolarization takes place, now we'll just call that movement, the sodium rushes in, so now we have a higher concentration of sodium on the inside, and potassium leaves, so now we have higher concentration of potassium on the outside. So this changes membrane potential, and thus we get movement. Okay, now be looking for the video that will explain this. You know, if a picture paints 1,000 words, a video paints 10,000 words. It'll be to your benefit to watch the video I post on the sodium potassium pump